This week, rage and wrath in Ephesus. More accurately, rage and wrath in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 31. Let's dive right in. Let all bitterness and rage is thumos, and wrath, orge, and shouting or clamor and cursing and slander be put away from you, along with every kind of malice. That's my translation of Ephesians 4:31, and I have included the two key words for today, thumos, rage, and orge, wrath. So aren't rage and wrath redundant? Don't they sound like they're kind of the same thing? Think about this. If they were redundant, would Paul use them? Use them both. He would probably just pick one, right? But interestingly enough, thumos, rage, and orge, wrath, are very frequently paired together. So, and also when they're applied to humans, they're almost always seen as a negative. In fact, here in Ephesians 4:31, we have a classic vice list, a list of negative traits. It's the opposite of a virtues list, right? A list of positive traits. And Paul really likes vice and virtue lists. He's a list maker all throughout his epistles. There's a great vice list a great virtue list in James chapter 3, I believe it is. 1 Peter has a virtues list in it as well. And virtues and vice lists are an important way of determining what the view of character from the positive and the negative are in the New Testament. So here we have, as part of a vice list, thumos, rage, and orge, wrath. But what's the difference between thumos and orge? Let's take a look. So thumos is a sudden passionate fury. Thumos by itself means passion, but when it's applied to a negative emotion, and specifically when it's paired together with orge, we know that it's talking about the immediate angry response to a stimulus. Someone says something, someone does something, you witness an event, and you are immediately or almost immediately thrown into a passionate anger about that thing. Thumos is that knee-jerk rage. Someone just pushes your button and you snap. And we get a great word from it, thumakos. And so if thumos is a passion or a rage, thumakos is an irascible person who's easily given to rage. Someone who is easily pushed over the edge is a thumakos. Let's move on to orge. So thumos, rage, orge, wrath. Orge is the explosive release of a built-up negative emotion. If we go back and look at early uses, Aristotle uses it to talk about plant growth, that early in the life of a plant, it draws in moisture from the ground and sap fills the stem and pushes forth leaves, and eventually fruit develops. And it's that surging, pushing forth of new life that we get this word orge from. And it's used about fruit to talk about how fruit starts out as something small, usually firm. I grew up in the middle of an apple orchard, and little baby apples are surprisingly hard, to the point where as kids we would pick them and shoot them out of slingshots because it was practically like shooting a marble. As they got older, they weren't quite as firm. They were a little juicier, but they weren't ready yet. They would be super sour and difficult to chew if you tried to eat a young apple. But then, when it was approaching ripeness, it would get softer and sweeter and fuller, and it was ready to sort of burst forth and let the seeds that were hidden inside go out into the world to make new apple trees, right? Because fruit is a reproductive strategy for plants. Critters eat the fruit and otherwise carry off the seeds to start new life elsewhere. So orge has to do with reproduction in the sense that fruit is being pushed forth to the bursting point and the seed gets scattered out into the world. Interestingly enough, the word orge also gives us our English word orgasm. And so the same root, that sort of fruitful bursting forth after a period of growth, swelling, and buildup, gives us both those concepts. So thumos, rage, is the sudden outburst of anger. Orge, wrath, is the slow boil that gets to a place of explosive release of that anger in a different sense, right? Hope that wasn't too graphic for you, but you're tough, you can take it. So thumos is that sudden reaction to a negative stimulus. It's a knee-jerk when something happens and you just sort of go off. But orge is that slow boil, that building wrath that eventually gets to a place where you can't keep the lid on it anymore, and it bursts out against the person or the persons who have caused the anger. It's a grudge versus an instant response to something. So that's what we get with thumos, rage, and orge, wrath. And what does Paul tell us about both of them, about both wrath and rage? He says we should put them away along with bitterness, along with shouting and cursing and every other kind of malice. Why? Because they are vices, not virtues. They are things to be avoided in your character. You don't want to be a knee-jerk kind of reaction person, nor do you want to be a keep the lid on and let it boil inside until you explode all over people with your anger. Put them all away with bitterness, cursing, shouting, etc., because they are in fact vices. If that was good for you, you know what to do with the liking and the sharing and the so forth. And until next time, Kars Kai Reina Humi, grace and peace to you.